I still remember the sound of her voice, sharp and dripping with contempt, like broken glass sliding across a table. I don't know what gutter you crawled out of, but we have standards here. People like you should know your place. Her name was Cynthia Bradford, the kind of woman who wore pearls in the middle of the afternoon and sipped champagne like it was her birthright. And me, I was just a waitress named Tiana Brooks, trying to make ends meet at the luxurious Bayshore Grand Resort in Palm Beach. I'd bent down to wipe spilled wine off her designer heels when she leaned closer, her manicured fingers clutching that crystal glass. "Don't you dare look me in the eye when you speak to me," she hissed, and before I could even react, both her hands shoved me with surprising force. The splash echoed as my body hit the pool uniform, ballooning with water chlorine stinging my eyes. Gasps rippled through the crowd of wealthy guests, and within seconds, phones were up, screens glowing, people whispering, "Oh my God, did you catch that?" I pulled myself out of the pool water, dripping from my apron, name tag floating beside me like some cruel piece of evidence. Laughter and judgment spread around the deck like wildfire, and Cynthia stood there brushing her hands together like she'd swatted away a fly. "That's what happens when the help forgets their place," she sneered. I could have cried, I could have screamed, but I didn't. I squeezed water from my apron, kept my back straight, and quietly picked up the notebook that had slipped from my pocket. My notebook filled with 11 months of research notes on workplace discrimination. Every page was smudged ink, bleeding but not ruined. I wasn't just a waitress. I was something else entirely, though nobody in that moment had a clue. The hotel manager, Daniel Harper, walked over, his voice painted with false concern. "Tiana, what happened here?" Before I could answer, Cynthia's shrill tone cut across the air. "Your employee attacked me. She spilled wine on me, then became aggressive when I asked her to clean it properly." Daniel's eyes darted to the platinum wristband circling her arm, the kind reserved for the resort's top-tier VIPs. His entire posture changed, like a soldier recognizing a general. "I see," he said coldly. Then to me, "Perhaps you should go home and change. We'll discuss this tomorrow." "Fire her immediately," Cynthia demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. I've never been treated so disrespectfully. And like clockwork, the young assistant manager, eager to please, rushed to Cynthia's side, apologizing, promising consequences. Around us, live streams were exploding online, some comments screaming for my head, others already calling it what it was: racism, plain and simple. I held on to my soggy notebook, wrote down every word, every gesture. "You can't take notes during this," the assistant manager protested. "Actually, I can," I replied calmly. "There's no law against documenting reality." The way her eyes widened, nobody expected the help to know labor law. But I did. Security came big men who'd seen drunk guests get rowdy, but weren't used to staff being treated like disposable props. Cynthia pointed at me, accusing, demanding I be banned from the property. The crowd was eating it up like a circus. And yet I stayed calm. Inside, my heart was pounding, but I knew something they didn't. This was all part of the bigger picture I'd been documenting for nearly a year. They escorted me to HR, a stale room that smelled like artificial lavender and bad decisions. Across from me sat Mrs. Thompson, the HR director, an older black woman whose tired eyes told me she'd seen too many people like me chewed up by this system. She pushed the termination papers across the desk. "Honey, I've been doing this 20 years. Good people lose everything over stuff like this. Tell me what really happened." I opened my notebook, pages still damp but readable. "I've documented 17 separate discriminatory incidents today alone. Would you like to see the data?" She blinked. Employees usually begged for mercy or cried. They didn't pull out data. Daniel stormed into the office, face flushed. "The video is viral," he muttered, shoving his phone in her direction. "This is a nightmare. Cynthia is threatening to sue if we don't fire Tiana immediately. Do you realize how much her family spends here?" The number rolled off his tongue, millions a year. He paced like a man watching his career slip away. That's when my phone buzzed. A single text. "It's time." My lips curled into the faintest smile. Daniel noticed and snapped. "Who's that? Your boyfriend coming to cause more trouble." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. My research partner, I said evenly. His frown deepened. Waitresses weren't supposed to have research partners. Through the window, I saw a sleek black car pulling into the drive, the kind of car that screamed old money. Staff straightened instinctively, guests whispered. And then he stepped out, tall, commanding silver at his temples, a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. My husband, Dr. Marcus Williams, CEO of Williams Global Resorts, one of the most powerful figures in hospitality, the man I'd been conducting this research project with. The doorman nearly tripped over himself, rushing to open the door. "Good afternoon, Mr. Williams," he stammered. "We weren't expecting you." Marcus's voice was polite but distant. "Last-minute visit. I'm here to see my wife." The word hit the lobby like a bomb. Whispers exploded. A billionaire's wife working undercover as a waitress? Impossible. But there he was, striding toward the pool deck where Cynthia still preened, retelling her story with more and more exaggeration. Her friends raised glasses, toasting her cruelty, when his voice cut through their laughter like a blade. "Mrs. Bradford, I believe you've met my wife." Her champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. "Your wife," she stammered, eyes darting from him to me, trying to piece it together. He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo from our wedding, me in silk white, him beaming beside me. "Perhaps you remember her from earlier today." Live stream numbers spiked into the hundreds of thousands as the internet feasted on the twist. Cynthia scrambled, smiling desperately. "Mr. Williams, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. She was aggressive. I felt threatened." But Miguel, the lifeguard, stepped forward, phone in hand. "That's not what happened. I filmed it." She pushed Mrs. Williams while she was cleaning up. Marcus's tone stayed calm, which somehow made it scarier. "Aggressive, you say? Cleaning a spill and being shoved into a pool? That's assault. And when you said people like her should know their place, that's racial motivation. That's a hate crime." Cynthia's face drained of color. Daniel came stumbling across the deck, sweating. "Mr. Williams, sir, please, there's been confusion. If I'd known who she was..." Marcus's eyes turned icy. "If you'd known she was my wife, you'd have treated her differently. So dignity depends on wealth, not humanity." Daniel's mouth opened and closed, nothing coming out. Then Marcus delivered the blow. Williams Global Resorts has been negotiating to acquire this hotel and 12 of its sister properties. Today's events have clarified the terms. Gasps spread. He laid out demands: termination for Daniel, mandatory anti-discrimination training for all managers, guest code of conduct with zero tolerance, monthly audits, full transparency. And me, promoted on the spot to Director of Inclusive Guest Experience, charged with reshaping the culture. Cynthia tried to play her last card. "My husband manages hundreds of millions in hospitality investments. You can't just cut us off." Marcus raised a brow. "We just did. Ashford Capital has lost its largest client effective immediately. You could practically hear her world collapsing in real time. What happened next spread like wildfire: termination papers, shredded reform protocols signed, the hotel bought outright by Williams Global within the hour. Cynthia's friends scattered like leaves in the wind, not wanting to be associated with her downfall. And me, I walked out of HR water-stained uniform, clinging to my skin, but my head higher than it had ever been. 6 weeks later, the Bayshore Grand looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed. Employees trained, policies enforced, dignity restored. Rosa, the housekeeper who once handed me a towel, was now cultural inclusion coordinator. Miguel got promoted and a scholarship. And I had a corner office where I reviewed 0 reports of discrimination for the first quarter in the hotel's history. But the story didn't end there. A year later, I stood before a room full of industry executives, telling them exactly what had happened, how humiliation at a poolside turned into reform across 2,000 hotels. My research, once hidden in a wet notebook, had become the backbone of federal workplace dignity protections. Cynthia's name became a punchline, her social standing demolished. Some people never learn, but the world around them can change. And here's the thing, people online still argue about it. Some say I staged it, that it was all a setup. Others say Cynthia got exactly what she deserved. But the real question isn't about me or her. It's about the system that allowed her to think she could shove someone into a pool and walk away laughing. So let me ask you, what do you think? Should people like Cynthia be given second chances after causing that kind of pain? Or are consequences the only way forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever seen something like this where power and prejudice collided in public? Subscribe for more real stories that peel back the polished surface and show the fight for dignity underneath. Because sometimes the most powerful response isn't yelling or violence, it's documenting, exposing, and demanding change. What would you have done if you were me standing there dripping wet with the whole world watching?